안녕. Let's get into making sentences in Korean. Let's go. Well, when we're trying to make Korean sentences, there's two things that you need to know. First is the order structure of Korean sentence, and second is particles. This is also called markers. This is a very specific component in Korean sentences, and we will see this afterwards. If we look at English sentence structure first, the order is subject, then verb, then the object. For example, the sentence I love you, it's S, V, then O. However, in Korean, the order becomes a bit different. The verb comes last. So it becomes subject, then object, then the verb. For example, the sentence I love you would become 나는 너를 사랑해. It is S-O-V. Okay, so in this sentence, the subject 나, the object 너, the verb 사랑해 are all familiar, right? Then what are these 는 and 를 highlighted here? So these are what are called particles. You can also call them markers. In Korean, we call them 조사. These markers come after each word in a sentence to connect the words between each other in sentences. For example, 는 is a subject marker, and it's added behind the subject 나. So it becomes 나는. So 는 doesn't really have a meaning, but it makes 나 into a subject. Whereas 를 here is the object marker. It's added behind the object 너. So it became 너를. In Korean grammar, there are many types of markers or particles, like subject marker, object marker, marker to indicate from and to, marker for indicating and with, marker for indicating time and location, plural particles, possessive particles, and so on. The most commonly used are subject marker and object marker, and we will look at those two today. Let's start with subject markers. As we saw in the example just now, subject markers come after the subject just to indicate that this is a subject. There are two subject markers. It's 은 and 는. Remember in the sentence just now, it was 나는 너를 사랑해. So it was 는. However, depending on the situation, there is also the subject marker 은. The use of 은 or 는 depends on the subject before the marker. It depends on whether the subject ends with a 받침 or not. 받침 is an ending consonant. It's a bit complicated, so let's look at examples to help you understand better. So, if the word before the 조사 has a 받침, then we're gonna use 은. So for example, let's look at this sentence. 칼은 학생이에요. This means Carl is a student. Here the subject is Carl. 칼 in Korean. So 칼 ends with a consonant here. See? 리을. So we're gonna use the marker 은. However, let's look at the sentence below. 저는 학생이에요. This means I am a student. Here the subject is 저, and it doesn't have a 받침. It doesn't end with a consonant. It ends with a vowel. So we're gonna use the marker 는. Yeah, it is complicated, but here's an easy tip. So let's think of OX for yes and no. If 받침 yes, then think of O, and it is 은. So it will be 칼은 학생이에요. If there is no 받침, then think of X. So it is composed of line, which is also similar to how 는 looks like. So it becomes 저는 학생이에요. Let's try out with examples together. Again, the sentence Carl is a student. 칼은 학생이에요. Because 칼 has a 받침. And think of O for yes, and it's a circle, so it is 은. There's the next example. This time, you try. The example is Jenny is a student. What should go in the blank?
참, 예, 예.
Yes, correct. Congrats to those who got it correct. 제니는 학생이에요. Because the in Jenny doesn't have a 받침. Let's try another example. This time, the sentence is Melissa is a student. What should go in the blank?
참, 예, 예.
Right! Congrats to who got it correct again. 멜리사는 학생이에요. Because the last word, last letter, 사 from 멜리사 ends with a vowel. It has no 받침. Let's go with another example. This time it's Susie. But she's not a student this time. She's a singer. So the example is Susie is a singer.
참, 예, 예.
Did you get it correct? The answer is 수지는 가수예요. 수지는 가수예요. Next up, here is a little quiz for you. Write a sentence in Korean that says your name and your job. So for example, for me, it would be 동그라미는 유튜버예요. What's your name and your job? Next, let's learn about object markers. Object markers, again, come after objects to indicate that these words are objects. There's two types of object markers, 을 and 를. Again, this depends on whether the object, the word, has a 받침 or not. If the word, the object, ends with a 받침, we use 을. If it doesn't end with a 받침, then we use 를. For example, the sentence I like Korea. 저는 한국을 좋아해요. Because 한국 ends with a 받침. 국. On the other hand, the sentence I like Jenny. It goes 저는 제니를 좋아해요. Because 제니 doesn't end with a 받침. It ends with a vowel. Now let's try this example. The sentence is Jenny likes Blackpink. So we need two markers here. One for Jenny, the subject, and one for Blackpink, the object. Can you guess?
참, 예, 예.
Did you get it correct? The sentence is 제니는 블랙핑크를 좋아해요. Because both Jenny and Blackpink ends with vowels. So we use the markers that has lines. Great! So here's another quiz for today. Let's make a sentence in Korean and tell me your favorite singer. So the sentence would go like this. 저는 somebody somebody and then the marker 좋아해요. For example, I would say 저는 21을 좋아해요. Who's your favorite singer? Leave your comments in the comments below. 안녕!